I wondered about that myself, especially when Pamela was standing over me trying to hit me with Sweet Sleep of Night and going, nobody writes like this. What I think is that subconsciously you kind of know where you're going with something. I can't remember even which scene it was, but I remember Catherine and Vince were interrupted by a phone call, and I had no idea why. And so I went along, and there was a phone call, and it went on for quite a bit more before something happened that made sense, or would have had to have that phone call in there. I don't even remember which story it was. But I remember sitting there going, oh, that's why I did that. But all I can think is that subconsciously there's stuff going on that you're not really aware of, and that you're kind of preparing the way for things. It's fun when it works that way.
I'm just wondering, I'm still very new to writing as this thing while involved. Do you find that your best stories just seem to come out of the end of the pen often more than the end?
That's another time I stopped writing, is when you're not getting that, when you're real conscious of making something happen, you know. Yeah, the easiest story I ever wrote was The Bridge, which I also it happens to be my personal favorite. But it was the easiest, it was like that. And I didn't even have to think about it. And I don't know how you create that. I haven't written anything in a year because I keep waiting for that feeling. It's a wonderful feeling, you know, when it comes. But I don't know what sets it off.
So you're not a word crafter?
Only in my day job. I work for a newspaper.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. Any other questions?
In dealing with exposition, I have two questions, kind of. How do you avoid too much of it, and how do you change from exposition to set up a scene, and then into a dialogue and action? How do you do that transition?
Yeah. It's always better if you don't have to make the transition. If you can somehow, if the exposition can be part of somebody's thought process who then speaks, that's probably the smoothest way to do it, rather than just saying, well, this was going on, and then suddenly have it going on. It's the old thing about showing instead of telling, which of course you can do with dialogue very well. And again, I think fanzines are so different than anything else, because how much exposition do you need? You still need to build up a particular story. But I think it's best if you can either get somebody to talk about it, or the character whose viewpoint you're writing from, if somehow it can come through their thought processes. That can be kind of hard in terms of, I've seen books where a character will turn into another character and say something like, saying, remember when George Washington was the first president? And this is the way of getting across that piece of information for those who don't know it. But so you have to be careful, I think, in dialogue, or it sounds kind of silly, because people don't always say things like that.
When I think of bad exposition, I always think of the old classic Star Trek, when they would have to tell you a whole lot about the disease that McCoy was trying to solve, or what was wrong with the engine, and they'd have to do it by like shouting it at each other, and I'm across the intercom, and I'm like, should you be on the bridge or something? Why are you going to say that? And those are some of the best scenes that come to my mind when I think of bad exposition, because you might as well just flash the sign.
Right.
Exposition.
Yeah.
Plot details we couldn't fit in. And sometimes I think that bad examples or humorous examples are good ways to look at things and
Oh,
think,
yeah.
okay,
You remember.
this is, or the Gene Roddenberry School where you take your thumb and go, and it's so obvious. You need that little sign back there that says, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You can see the sign, the reader can see the sign.
Yeah, probably the less exposition you have, the better. But of course, that's not always necessary.
It's not bad. It's like you're saying, it needs to be subtle. It has to
Needs to
be
be
part
subtle.
of. It shouldn't be a jump from the George Washington. Used to be the first president to what they're talking about. It should come in like, that time we went out to cappuccino. Yeah, that was cool. Oh, can you believe that Nancy's now blah?
That reminds me of a commercial that I keep editing every time I see it. I don't know if this irritates anybody else, but it's a coffee commercial where she says, this reminds me of that time in Italy when we met. You know, I mean, do people say that? Wouldn't you say, this reminds me of when we met, or this reminds me of when we met in Italy, but it reminds me of that time in Italy when we met. Every time I hear that. Of course, the problem with using a lot of dialogue, which is what you really want to do in a scene, because that's what you saw on television. But that can get boring too, if it just goes on, you know, page after page after page after page. And obviously it helps if you're changing viewpoints. You can switch to another locale, another person, and that breaks that up. But in a lot of my writing anyway, I'm not doing that too much, and I just kind of like to stick with Catherine Vincent mostly. But I think what you can do is vary the mood. So if I've got a real tense situation, rather than making it go on forever, which I think when you do that, if it's uninterrupted, then pretty soon you kind of drift off. It's almost the same as being bored. You get used to the tension. I like to cut away to maybe a kind of a lighthearted scene with another character, or just have something happen that's in a different kind of mood to break that up. Because I think we get tired of reading something that has the same tone to it for very long. Any other questions?
Do you have a list of all the things you read?
I'm sorry.
Do you have a list of all the things you read?
Yeah, 4.
You've written a lot of things for outside of the
There's nothing on Kaleidoscope 1, 2, 3. When angels fall. Really prolific.
There was a story in last year's
That's true.
Expectations.
Yes,
There is a scene.
there is a scene.
That's a wonderful story. It was things from a very different point of view from what we saw in the series, how the action is precipitated, but it picks up all the pieces, all the threads. And I was just curious if you had any other little gems like that lying around in art places.
I guess I've written a story for each of the souvenir books. Aside from that, I can't think of these things. I don't. I think that's it. Yeah. That was a good case of that. Everybody, I don't know how many people have read it, but in There Is a Season, it starts out with the pilot, sort of, from Vincent's viewpoint, and it starts taking off like you think you're seeing the pilot. And that was a point where I had an idea, which was, what if some little thing had happened differently? And Vincent and Father have a conversation in the beginning about, you know, the road not taken, and the whole hinging of fate on one little choice here or there. So that was what I knew I wanted to do it about, was just change something in a minor way that would throw everything off. But I didn't know what it was going to be. And so I just started writing it, and Vincent goes up and he finds this body in the park. And originally I was going to write it so that he goes up there and you expect him to find this body, and it isn't there. And that's the way I thought it was going to be. And I'm writing along, and he insisted on finding this body. I mean, it's just the way it went. What in the world? And then she was dead, which was a shock to me. And I'm sitting here going, now where do we go?